Randa El-Khatib. She's now at the University of Victoria, but before she was at the University of Beirut, and I think what she is presenting actually started at Beirut University, she will tell us. And her presentation is on prototyping modes of interactive mapping. So Randa.
Thank you. Okay, my presentation should start up. Thanks for introducing me, Elizabeth, and I'm happy to be here. Actually, the first time I presented the first version of this project, I was also in Leipzig. This was 2 years ago, and it was my first big presentation, so I'm happy to be here to talk about how far this project has gone. So, for 2 terms within the last 2 years, I have been working with a team on digital mapping tool development. The team consists of representatives of the computer science and the English departments at the American University of Beirut and Lebanon. So the central motivation for this project stems from a desire to have open source tools that can support humanities research in a user-friendly manner. Although many existing mapping tools have excellent features, they're often insufficiently equipped to answer humanities questions since they were initially designed for other fields and primarily rely on quantitative methods, neglecting the more subjective elements that are central to humanities research. In this paper, I briefly have an overview of the first tool, and then I talk about what we learned from that, and then the second tool, which is going to be the main focus. So in the second iteration, we've been prototyping in an attempt to overcome the major limitations discovered in automatic geoparsing. And those who don't know what geoparsing is just basically the idea of finding a place name and finding the geocoordinates with which place it onto the map itself. So we've been doing this automatically, and there are certain problems that come up with this. We've also been working towards making mapping a more inclusive, accurate, and collaborative endeavor, and this also builds on yesterday's presentation by Susan Brown, where she was talking about the essential role of collaboration within digital humanities projects, and I feel that often in digital mapping projects it's still been not very collaborative, or if collaborative, then in one space, and it's not been a kind of international collaborative thing, which is another thing that we've been moving towards. So don't judge by the interface, it actually works. So this is the first version of Topo Text, and Topo Text combines different open access tools, including the same Stanford named natural language processing toolkit, including the named entity recognizer and the part of speech tagger, as well as the Google API and Maps engine and Wordle. So Topo Text uses a Stanford named entity recognizer to automatically identify all the place names that are mentioned in a text and place it on a map. So literally you just upload a plain TXT format into the tool, no matter how long it is. It will identify all the times that the place names that were mentioned and put it on a map. So this is just an example of one of the maps. This is only the first half of William Thackeray's Vanity Fair, which is a really long, really long piece, and I just took the first half so that we can still kind of understand what's going on. So I think what first happened when we first run Topo Text, which was really interesting to me, is how many place name references are in a text. We usually are not completely aware of it. And I feel like this is really interesting, and part of my initial project was just to compare world maps and see what are the trends, where are certain places mentioned, and I mean, is there a specific interest in a specific time across different kinds of works, and what is the reason for that? And Topo Text also allows you, I mean, this is a world map, but I can say, oh, I just want to look at all the places mentioned in England or in Germany or whatever country it is that I'm working with. So Topo Text also calculates the most frequent words mentioned within a specific proximity of a place name. So it's either, let's say it identifies all the place names. I have a concordance tool, so lets me go and do my close reading and read everything in context. Then I say, okay, so what are all the words mentioned around London and the specific place in the text? And it gives me a word cloud that says, what are those things, or I can just read it. But then if I'm interested in the collocations of words and places across the entire novel, so let's say, for example, I'm interested in what Charles Dickens said about London and all of Oliver Twist, right? So it will give me the most frequent words around that across the entire text, which can be also interesting to see how does for an example, an author's portrayal of a certain place change as he grew up or wrote new things. So one example of the word cloud that can be created, this is also continuing with the same example, Vanity Fair. So this is a word place collocation of Vanity Fair, again, around London. And so Vanity Fair, there's a lot of monetary talk. And as you can see here, the most frequent words include words such as debt, creditors, capital, amount, shilling, hundred, purchased, creditors, pounds, sum, and other words also hinting the same topic, negotiation, compromise, and retirement, all of these things directly or indirectly associated with money. So it also allows you, basically the idea is to see what are certain themes that occur around place names, and even going beyond that, the part of speech tagger was integrated in such a way that, okay, so what are all the nouns related to place names and how do those change over time? So nouns will give you more of themes. You can look at verbs, adjectives, adverbs, whatever it is that you want to do. And it is available in open source on GitHub, so anyone can use both versions. So I used this tool extensively for my master's thesis, which is called Collocating Places and Words in 19th Century London. And after working with the tool, and again, this is a prototype, which was completely coded by students, I started seeing some limitations that were specific to Topo text, but also larger to most mapping tools that are available, and there are various ways that they do. So the most important ones that struck me are, first, the inability to support ongoing collaborative mapping projects that involve continuous map enrichment. So we want to be able to take a map and really enrich it with a lot of data and be able to visualize it and share it with each other, and we really need something that helps us do that. Another issue that I'll talk about more later, but I'll just talk about briefly here, is the idea that mapping tools are connected to modern gazetteers. Gazetteers are basically the places from where they take this information. So this works well with 19th century and onwards, but not that much if we want to talk about other kind of literatures, which most of us are working with, which is why oftentimes when you see a lot of big digital mapping projects, they're usually 19th century and onwards, if you haven't noticed, except like things like a map of early modern London, which is, and others, of course, but still. Another problem is the black box problem related to the invisible backend geoparsing. So let's say I uploaded this document and it automatically did the parsing. So then it says, okay, so London is in England. But what if I'm working with Canadian literature and I'm not talking about London, England, I'm talking about London, Canada? These kind of automated parsing methods would just put it in England, and there is no way to go back in and change it. So essentially you get a map that is inaccurate and there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, that's not very nice. And finally, I think this is the most part that annoys me in a lot of mapping tools available. So not a lot of tools allow you to automatically parse this data, but those that do have specific limitations like, oh, I'll only allow you to parse 100 place names or whatever. And even those, they kind of force you to stay. They don't let you export this information, so they really force you to stay working on their platform, which is also another nuance because there are different kind of mapping tools available, and each one has certain different features. Some allow you to see, let's say, change over time, like torque functionalities in CartoDB. Others allow you to visualize things in different ways. So really sticking to one tool is not very efficient, I think, in the kind of work that we want to do. So many of these shortcomings are the result of an automatic approach. What we did for the second prototype is refine our previous approach to include human judgment, both in terms of interacting with the data and in terms of having agency in parsing it. Hence, opening up the black box that I mentioned earlier, so having a more interactive element. The second iteration of Topo text, you guys will say, oh, this is the same tool you already showed us, nothing changed. But there are a few extra, I'm sorry, this is falling. Okay. Again. This is too. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm back. So this is the second. This is the second tool, and there are new things. So there are a couple of new buttons that really make all the difference. So this was very recently published, just a couple of months ago. And again, this tool was primarily created already. One of the people that I worked with, who was an undergraduate student, and I was as a master's student back then, she became a master's student, and now I'm a PhD student, and we continued this collaboration together. Very intelligent young lady. Her name is Julia Zini, and she's the one that did all of the coding, and this was under the supervision of David Risley, whom you all know. You can wave if you want. And I don't think you need to. Everyone knows who you are. And Shadi al-Baswani, who's part of the computer science department at AUB. So I would like to emphasize one more time that this is all created by students within a very limited time span. And one of the primary perks that a digital web environment affords is the ability for researchers to work collaboratively on a single project despite being in different places. And perhaps more broadly, using prototyping as an opportunity for cross-disciplinary human interaction. The Web 2.0 medium promotes social knowledge creation practices, which we believe have always been at the heart of knowledge production, by taking it to an extent that has been previously unimaginable. So we've always been working together, but really the web environment gives us abilities to do this on a much, much higher scale. Here, our definition of social knowledge creation is borrowed from the social knowledge creation annotated bibliography that was produced at the Electronic Textual Cultures Lab. This is the second version that's coming out, but is also building on a first version of this bibliography. And there we define social knowledge creation as acts of collaboration in order to engage in or produce shared cultural data and or knowledge products. Throughout history, this type of scholarship has been manifested in an infinite amount of ways, and this is just a way to bring it to mapping. Thinking about meaningful ways to implement a social knowledge creation aspect in digital mapping was perhaps one of the biggest challenging parts of the prototyping process. After a lot of thinking, we thought that perhaps the first stage and what we can do for now is have this as unstructured notes, so basically as annotations that can appear directly on the map. So we can start annotating the maps within the document that you're working in that can be shared with everyone, and I'll get to that. But also continuously annotating this data and this map and having them appear directly on the place names on the map. So this can be in so many ways. I mean, you may want to simply take passages. Let's say London appeared in this context, so just take the passage and put it in. You might want that appear to have your own kind of analysis. Okay, so this appeared in a negative or positive context, and what does it mean to you? What does it mean to the project? And also have that kind of data. It could be, I mean, it gives you the freedom to really annotate it in whichever way you like. So this allows researchers to work collaboratively and continuously enriching data and sharing maps. These annotations can be exported in the plain format. It's called the CSV format. It's like a TXT format just for spreadsheets, and be shared and reused on other platforms as well. So as mentioned previously, one of the major limitations that modern tools face is that they're connected to modern gazetteers. So modern gazetteers will only give you the standardized place name that this means, and just that one thing. So with the second iteration, we were really seeking to open up this mapping practice. So we switched from the Google API to GeoNames API. And GeoNames is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, open gazetteers available online, and it also allows you to integrate it within your research. So GeoNames has historical place names, it has alternative place names, it also works, it's multilingual, so you can use different languages. So this really opens up the scope, and maybe it's not the perfect solution, but it's definitely a big step forward, which really allows you to have bigger, widen the scope of the kind of projects you would like to visualize. Also, we switched from the Google's map engine, from the map itself to Leaflet, which is an interactive open map. And so we're really pushing as much as we can towards open access and supporting these open source projects. Another thing Topo does, which is really interesting, is that it calculates the weight. So the weight is the number of times a place was mentioned in a text. So for example, if you have a text and Leipzig was mentioned 300 times and London was mentioned 1 time, if you do this, you'd previously see all of the things mentioned equally. But that is not really fair. It does not reflect what my thing is talking about. So the tool here, it automatically calculates this number and shows it. So you have, if Leipzig was mentioned more times, you'll have it as a bigger point on the map, and then London would be smaller, which I feel like is great, because previously would do this manually or would have to go and count it somewhere else and put it back in, I don't know. And then again, as I mentioned previously, it supports annotations that can be visualized on the map. And you can also import your own data and visualize it. So if you already have place names and you have annotations and all of those things, you're welcome to use the map interface. So you'll just import the data and you'll have it there. And I think this is finally and very importantly, TopoText 2.0 exports all the automatically geoparsed data, including the place names, their geocoordinates, and all the other attributes into a separate CSV file. So everything that has been parsed, you can just export and reuse on other platforms based on what you want. Another really, really important thing is that, so the problem that I said when London would be in Canada and then here it's in England, so what it does is that when you upload your text, it will just do it and map it probably as England, which is a more popular times that is mentioned, but it will give you also in the file all the alternative place names, locations that it could be. So this could be London, Canada, this could be London, X, Y, and it already gives you the geocoordinates. So if you feel like, oh, this dot should not be here, it should be there, you can easily go and you can just change it to be there without having to manually go and search for the geocoordinates and search for the possibilities and all of that. So it really opens up this automatic method to include human intervention to make it more accurate, more precise, and more subjective. Subjective in a good way, I mean, being able to visualize your own data. So the maps themselves can be saved on the user's desktop with annotations, weights, and all of this information can be exported, saved, imported. And one can, so then when you save it, it just saves like a icon as a browser, whatever browser that you're using. And then when you want to reopen it, all you have to do is double click and it'll already open the map with all of your information. You do not have to restart the tool, you do not have to enter all this data again. You can share this map with whoever you want and it'll always be available. And I think that this is also pretty interesting because we have a lot of issues in digital humanities on how do we save our data. And we end up usually print screen and then all of that, it becomes very 2D. All of the interactive element is gone. So here it really preserves that kind of interactive aspect to it. So in conclusion, in our work we have used prototyping and cross-disciplinary thinking as a human encounter between different ways of thinking and bringing questions together. Our main aim was to overcome the limitations of the first version and to include earlier translated text and other kind of non-standardized text and place name spelling, and automated mapping practices. And here I want to emphasize the semi part, since opening up automated geoparsing allows the user to jump in and make adjustments in a quick and easy manner, which really increases the accuracy and scope of questions that maps can help us answer in a humanities setting. Finally, we hope that prototyping of TopoText 2.0 has shown one way of inviting social knowledge creation and human interaction into current mapping practices, and we welcome any ideas for future development of this project. Thank you.